we make levels on this activity, but if like a student can't go past a level, we keep them on that.
If they, let's say you start a child, you think this child, because you're estimating, remember the zone? We're always estimating what the child can do. That's not too hard, not too easy. Let's say you start a child in level number 2 and they fly right through it. Give them an opportunity to try level number 3 with scaffolding. So the same approach that you use in level number 1 with your zone and proximal development activities, what you're going to do right here. You're going to set a learning goal that is just perfect for them. It's in their zone. And then you're going to do the activity with them. By the way, I find frequently that doing the activity as a small group is very, very beneficial. That activity doesn't have to be one-on-one the way it is with your zone. You can do, maybe it's a board game, or the zoo animals matching game that you create. That facilitates you setting a social goal. That facilitates you setting a verbal goal, talking, communicating with other people. So in answer, yeah, the main academic goal is matching the zoo animals and identifying them, but then there's a social goal and perhaps a communication goal. You have to have at least 2 for each child. So when we say learning goal, perhaps it would be better to say learning goals, and then make sure that you've got a goal for each child in some other non-academic domain.
So the one goal is academic, that's the first one, and the second one is the social or interactive something.
Yes. Now what I'm telling you is, and we're going to have to get much sharper about this, because of that teacher performance assessment that you'll have when we do student teaching, a great deal of that is data collection. And it is vital, and this is your warm-up. You're doing it already on your chart. You're going to set the learning goals, and then you're going to have a column on your chart which is the progress. And you're going to talk about your scaffolding. How much progress did they make? So you're collecting the data on that. Specify, for example, that if it's matching those zoo animals, that they did level number 2 and they matched 5 zoo animals readily. You can list the zoo animals. And so you moved on to level number 3, which was a surprise to you. And at level number 3, they were able to match an additional 3 animals with a great deal of scaffolding. So you can, here's the key. This is what this big assignment is all about. You want the number 1 thing to do? You have to ensure that each of the levels is developmentally appropriate. Did you hear that phrase? For that child. Have you got papers to write on? I got some extras if you need them. Assignments. Okay. It has to be, and I'm looking for that evidence, that if you use your English language learner for level number 1, because they have very limited English skills, I have to be able to see that you haven't had expectations that were inappropriate. That your expectations in that activity that you designed was developmentally appropriate, not for all the 3-year-olds in the turtle room, but that activity was developmentally appropriate for that child. Now, Buku, I want you to write this in bold. This is how do you get exceeds on the rubric. We want you all to meet the standard. That's your goal. And the 1A standard, knowing the characteristics and needs of children. If you want to move to the highest ranking, the 4 score, what you must do is while you're writing about Jose's activity, identifying the zoo animals and his verbal and social goal, while you're doing that, you, and I'm making this up, but this is a hypothetical, I'm one of 4, I find while I am working with Jose that he already knows some animals because they are very like the Spanish name for that animal. So, because he already knows them, I add those to the activity. You know, flying by the seat of my pants? Oh, he already knows those two animals. Those are cognates in English and Spanish. I'm going to add those in. He will feel very successful. What I'm doing is while I am teaching, your lesson plan is always flexible. When you write a lesson plan, you just don't march down the list of the things you're doing. You have to be creative, on the spot, responsive to the children. So even while you're teaching Jose level number 1, you are going to modify it so that Jose will be even more successful. If you do that and you bold it, help me find it. If you say, I modified for Jose to make him successful, that's how you're going to get a 4. Now I'm going to show you a word. And our textbook doesn't use this word. I found one page 109, I think. But this word effectively captures what all the key assessments are going to expect you to do. NAEYC doesn't emphasize this word. NAEYC has its own framework for developmentally appropriate. But from this point on, instead of saying modify or customize, here's your goal. Put it in there. You can start to use it right now. You are going to differentiate. Part of your differentiation is having 3 levels. But that's not enough. If we're not still in Jose's zone, we're going to differentiate even more so that Jose is successful. So by the time you get to the teacher performance assessment and student teaching, this is just second nature to you. You don't create a lesson that is for the whole group of 16 3-year-olds. You don't create a lesson that's just for a group of 6 in the 3-year-old room. You're going to create a lesson that is one that you can differentiate even more closely to meet the needs of the child. So 1A is meeting the needs of an individual, and you must differentiate. That is the key. So if you can identify clearly on your data chart the needs of Jose, his limited English. He's only been in the United States for 3 months. He's only been in this pre-K for 2 weeks. If you can, he knows 6 words, and you list them. You clearly identify Jose's needs. You create learning goals for Jose. Then you do the activity with him, and perhaps with a social goal with a group. You document the progress. And then the last column on your data chart is you do comments on the developmental appropriateness of your activity. So the chart that you formulate on Keeley's chart, remember the one I had you bring? On Keeley's chart, the format is very, very effective. And we're not even going to change that next fall when we add the 3B data collection standard to this list. So here's the difference. Week 1, 1 child. 1 case study, 1 child profile, very needy child. Zone of proximal development, focus in on their needs. Then week number 2, 3 children. 1 at a beginning to an emerging, we usually say emerging level for children who are somewhat delayed than their age peers. and then a level that's typically developing in a level that's advanced for the 3-year-olds. And then we begin the data collection process as we formulate the learning activities. We're going to start by keeping in mind all of the data that we have to gather. So my goal is I want you to be able to gather the evidence, the photographs, because you're going to take photographs here too, only of the children if you get permission. You're going to use pseudonyms again. You're not going to use Jose's real name. I already told you. You're going to give each of them an imaginary name. And you are going to identify as many, write this word, multiple influences for each of those 3 children as you can determine. So the first standard, 1A, and we'll look at the rubric, is focused on children's characteristics and needs. Keyword needs. The second standard, 1B, is focused on all the things that you can't control, teacher. What are the multiple influences? Marty, would you get the sandwiches out? We've got 3 more people. What are the multiple influences that influence Jose? The fact that he's new to the United States, he's an English language learner, he is extremely shy, he is living in an apartment in Richmond, Indiana with 2 other Spanish-speaking families. And to the best of your knowledge, mother is a stay-at-home mother and father is, what's father doing? He's working at a local factory. Those are multiple influences. So 1B, you're looking at all the factors that influence how Jose is learning in the classroom.
What was 1A?
1A is focusing on characteristics and needs. Key in on needs. Now 1B, multiple influences. I want you to put a plus and a minus. Multiple influences can be positive influences. We already talked about our level number 3 person, Katie. Her mother's a kindergarten teacher. Dad is a fireman. She's doing wonderful in school. She's academically advanced and very social. She's got a lot of positives in her life. She takes ballet. Her grandparents have taken her to Disneyland. She's learning French. So there can be positives that are helping the child's growth and development, but there can be negatives too. So, and I'm not going to make this up, one here in Richmond. The child was one of 11 children. Came to school with clothes that were dirty, torn, tattered, and at times the child had poor hygiene. The child also came to class hungry. Is that child going to be able to learn to their maximum potential? So multiple influences have to paint the picture. What is happening outside our classroom that's going to influence how this child will learn? So you're going to have to do a little investigation, not just with the case study child in week number 1, but with all 3 children, so that you have a column for 1B. Now, on 1B2, I'm going to take you back. You want the positives and the negatives, so I need to be able to see that. I need to see that you know there's good things that happen in a child's life and there's worrisome things. But I also need to see you use that word domains there too. That you can see that these positives and these negatives impact all the domains of a child's development. I can't tell you how many times I see children who are sleep deprived and they come to your classroom and they misbehave. Well, that is a multiple influence that could have a profound influence on how they perform in your classroom. And it needs to be identified here on your chart. And when you talk about standard 1B, you need to be able to talk about that factor. Question?
Yeah, when we were talking about the goals earlier,
Mm-hmm.
do we need to have one academical and one non-academical, or no academical?
I would say because your learning activity is going to be academic centered. And it might be transportation, and you're identifying planes and ships and boats. You're going to have easily one academic goal. And it has to be structured so it's developmentally appropriate for the child. And then, be careful that you don't do 5 goals altogether. Because if you talk about a social goal and a gross motor goal and a verbal goal, you should collect data on each of those goals and write about them too. So I'm just saying, don't make it too difficult for you. You have to have at least 2, one academic and one other one. But don't go, you won't impress me because you're not going to have room to get it all on a chart if you do 6. But easily if you were working with that child one-on-one, you could. Because some of your babies are going to be very needy.
Is it okay, like, are we supposed to completely, like, separate the 2 weeks? Like, the first week is only zone of proximal development, and the second week is only DAP? Or can you kind of start, like, looking out for what kids you might want to work
The
with?
very first day you go in the classroom, you're already looking.
So for, like, the DAP kids, too? Okay.
You're going to talk to that teacher and talk about the case study and identify that child really fast. And you're in the back of your mind, you're thinking, this could be my level number 1 child.
Okay.
By the end of the week, though, you should have identified those 3 and begin. And I caution you on this, when you have these 3 children for your DAP activity, we're not going to, in any way, appear to be favoring that child, giving them undue attention. You're going to have to be pretty careful in that you're working with all 16 children in the classroom, but you're going to be gathering a little more data about the 3 that
So
you're
you
going to
do,
have.
like, the ZPD activities with, like, multiple kids, but only really,
Oh,
like, document
yes! Oh, aren't you?
Okay.
Absolutely. You're doing that ZPD activity with 1 child, but everybody wants to do it with you, of course. Do it over and over again. You only have to do 1 report.
Okay.
Yes, and the same way, I'm going to say this about your learning activity that you develop. Oh, I've had them with, I remember one really fabulous one was with Chicka Chicka Boom Boom. You know that book, Chicka Chicka Boom Boom? Of course, every child in the room wanted to do those activities. So do it. It's a learning activity for every child. You only collect the data on 3. What I have found very helpful, and the teachers really love this when you do it, if you do an activity and it's on big boards, try to laminate it. And I suggest you give it to the teacher as a gift when you leave. If you create, and sometimes they're just so complimentary of the activity that you've designed. Now, and I'm not saying this from a selfish standpoint, meaning who's going to fill out your field evaluation at the end of 2 weeks? The teacher. So I'm not just being plotting here to make sure I get a high score. I think it's a worthy thing for us to be grateful to these teachers who are taking you under their wing and counseling you and mentoring you. So for you to do at minimum a little thank you card and for you to donate your learning activity to the classroom. Yeah, they all like that cowboy activity that you did, and they're going to want to do it when you're gone. As a matter of fact, you might leave some pictures of you there, so that and stick them on the back of your cowboy activity, so when they pull them out, they'll recall how you were with them for 2 weeks. I'm just saying, focus on zone the first week in the case study and try to wrap it up. But I'm calculated. What we're doing is we're building skills, and we're hitting the ground running, folks. You're not getting sophomore year to kind of cruise into teacher ed. The bar for teacher education and teachers right now, even in the last 2 years, has gone from here up to here with that teacher performance assessment. So we have got to hit the ground running to get you doing teacher instruction, not just assisting and observing, and doing it with a depth that 10 years ago would not have been expected of teacher candidates, not even 5 years ago of teacher candidates. So anybody who tries to convince you that early childhood is a Senji major, oh, piece of cake. Little do they know that it is one of the most complex and challenging majors on campus, that we're teaching children with autism and all manner of special needs, teaching English language learners, and teaching children across the span of development. And it's usually not until a person has a child that they come to appreciate how special you are as a teacher for their classroom. So here's what we've accomplished so far. We've talked about 1A and needs and data collection, and we've talked about 1B, the second standard, multiple influences. So we're going to take a little break right here because the next one is going to be the caring classroom. It's how do you create the classroom environment. And then the last one is effective teaching strategies. So let's take a break. I'm going to get some sandwiches. Come on. And anybody wants a cookie? Restroom break. So required to add a 0 and a 1. Now here's your goal. This is me when I used to write grants for Richmond Community Schools. Which Marty and I have lived here. We used to live in Eaton over in Preble County, north of town. When I became an elementary principal, as a matter of fact, you came past one of the schools where I was a principal. When I was writing grants for the school system now, I would always go to the rubric for the grant. And sometimes you were asking for $1 million or $2 million. This is not insignificant grants that we were writing. I would always go to the rubric and find out how many points were expected or earned by various portions of what I wrote. So my goal for you is, let's try for 4s. Do you mind getting exceeds? I like giving 4s. So the best column is the one on the right. And as you're planning your writing, this is where you're going to look. So here I saw in bold, deeper knowing and understanding of the individual. That sounds like what we were talking about. 3 individuals, right? 3 individuals, their characteristics and the needs of each child. And 1A4, one thing that's essential that you highlight right now is the 6th line down, and it says confirmed by NAEYC sources. Your goal is to explain this concept of developmentally appropriate instruction and make sure you give credit to the source, the Green NAEYC book. You are going to weave in as many NAEYC quotes as you can. Now, my advice is that one of the easiest ways to give evidence that you know and understand developmentally appropriate is for you to cite the principles, and that's principle with a P-L-E. Principles are guiding statements. They're summaries of the main ideas. There are 12 of those principles for this concept known as developmentally appropriate. I want you to write down page 10 through page 15. There are 12 of these principles. And as you're explaining your learning activity and how you have constructed it. I'll give you a hypothetical. One thing that you might say about your learning activity is NACCE says in principle number 10, play is an important vehicle for developing self-regulation as well as promoting language, cognition, and social competence. You're going to create your learning activity so it's playful. Isn't that revolutionary? That it's enjoyable. That it's something that all the children in the turtle room really want to do. So as you're describing your activity, you might say the children have been really interested in this cowboy-cowgirl theme in the last few weeks. And they have enjoyed the Dramatic Play Center. So I built my learning activity to take advantage in a playful manner in order to build language, cognition, and social competence. You can weave in all 12 principles and help yourself get a level number 4. This is one of the easiest ways to give evidence that you understand everything in this book. Remember what major principles are? They're core summary statements that epitomize everything else in the book. So page 10 through page 15. Now, do you recall that I said you have a limited number of pages to write your report? Doesn't that kind of worry you? Well, it should, because 3 pages isn't very long. We've given you, and remember this assignment is for the Oxford campus, and it's for Hamilton and Middletown, where they have the same course too, 272. We've given you a format that if you follow it exactly, we think that you're going to be able to get in all the key information to meet the standard and possibly to exceed the standard. But only 3 pages. What we have found really, really helpful is to give you some abbreviations, some shortcuts to save you time. So the first shortcut is for you to put a capital P, and for the one I just gave you on play as an important vehicle for developing, you put P10. You don't have to write a whole citation. You don't even have to list this book as a footnote or in a bibliography. Everything we're doing is based on this NACCE book. So my advice to you is, as you're writing your report and you're talking about play and how important it was for you to make a playful activity, that you explain that. Don't copy the whole principle. Don't copy play as an important vehicle for developing da-da-da-da-da. All you have to do is write your explanation for why you did what you did and put P10. I would like you to do one more thing for me. This makes it much, much easier for me to see your full scope of using these principles. If you want to highlight those principles, if you use a core phrase from one of these principles in your explanation, we have found it very, very helpful that you just do the principle and CA for all the core approaches on the 4C standard. You're going to have 6 core approaches. You don't have to write them. We're all using the same rubric. We're all examining it in the same way. Don't write all the core approach. Just put the main phrase and put CA, and we'll be able to do it.
So, like, instead of saying this, like, you may use play in something, and then going to say this is using principle 10 for play, just
Yeah, you don't even have to
parentheses.
say that. I'm reading your mind. You're telling me why you made a playful activity. You put P10 there. I'll know that that was your justification. You don't even have to copy all of this.
Just like throw it in parentheses, or
Put it in parentheses. And if you want to use a core phrase, for example, remember I told you one on 1A, you want to get a love. The captions where you can put much more additional information. So on the photo, I will tell you you get 5 points for the photo essay, up to 5. It's not a given. You get up to 5 points for the photo essay. At minimum, you must show the 3 levels of your activity. At minimum, show the 3 levels. Make sure I can see clearly. This was level number 1, emerging. This was level number 2, understanding. By the way, this one clearly says use. This standard wants to see your commitment to using NAEYC's approach to a classroom environment that is safe, healthy, supportive, challenging. NAEYC has a very clear idea what kind of classroom you should have. And that's why on this standard, as you write to this, it's very helpful for you to write a paragraph. And you title that paragraph 1C, Learning Environment. And this is where, because NAEYC wants to see you committing to use their approach, use the word I will, I shall, my classroom. Don't describe third person, some other place. You're going to show here your commitment to using NAEYC's approach to the classroom environment. So it wants a deeper knowledge and integrated use, and this is where you need to use those 4 adjectives. All 4 adjectives in the standard language. So you're going to talk about healthy. That doesn't just mean healthy snacks, by the way. Allergy-free. It also means psychologically healthy. Warm and nurturing, healthy. Respectful. Use the word respectful. Think about your special needs children and being respectful. Think about other cultures. Think about SES, social. Oh, by the way, I'm giving you tips on level number 4. Think about respectful from a variety of lenses. It's not just using manners. It's being respectful of all cultures, all people, and making them a part of your community. Supportive, next adjective. You usually can get supportive through zone of proximal development and seeing the individual child and supporting their needs. And the same thing with challenging. Just a little bit of challenge and support. Now, this is the best tip. Go right to the book. Turn, you helped me find it a minute ago. Turn to page 16 and 17. Because NAEYC has 12 principles and they have 5 guidelines. And these 5 guidelines are to guide everything that you do when you're teaching young children. And the first guideline is the one you're going to use to write your understanding of 1C. So, if I were you, the clearest way that NAEYC describes this learning environment is creating a caring community of learners. In your notes, put it in bold, underline it, put it in a box. These 2 words summarize it, caring community. NAEYC talks about this all the time. It's their metaphor. Some teachers talk about their classrooms being a family. That's okay. Some guys talk about their classroom being a team, and I'm okay with that. NAEYC talks about caring community, and you should talk about it in this paper too. So when we're a community, we're all in this together. We're working together, taking care of each other. And this is where you talk about you being a warm and nurturing person. caring about each child so they know how special and important they are to you. So for 1C, it's different than 1A, talking about characteristics and needs, and it's different than 1B, multiple influences, different than domains, because 1C wants to see you committing to having a caring community as your classroom. So there are certain key words, and I'm looking right here at 16 and 17 now. So I'm going to give you some key words, and you can pick up some more, and you can use quotations, because you know what we're always looking for, ample citations. So one key word is valued, unique, relationships. And it's not just you and the child, your relationship. This is also the relationships peer to peer. That it's one of your main goals. Children have to learn to be friends with the other children in the classroom. And then we already talked about respects. Oh, teachers responsible at all times. In other words, monitoring, supervising, preventing, redirecting, not just on the playground. You are responsible for those 16 children in the turtle room all the time. Listen, feelings, psychologically safe. I love this word. Enjoyment. Learning is to be enjoyable. And then for that respectful, now remember I'm giving you tips for how to get the 4. The 4 is coming right out of here. My classroom will be. And this one, home, language, and culture. And you must, if you want the 4, you must address home, language, and culture as part of your description of your classroom. So we advocate more than a multicultural approach. We advocate an approach that embraces all families and all children and all languages in our classroom. Okay, so that's 1-4, and I find usually a nice paragraph of your 3 pages. Clearly identified 1C with some of these key words, but you better have healthy, supportive, challenging, respectful, and you better have caring community. So do you have any questions about 1C? Doesn't that sound doable? Keely did it. She showed you 1C. All right, now the next one is you using NACCE's approach to teaching. So this is 4C. And this is the one where I said you could use, I have to stand up a minute, bear with me. I'm stiffening up. This is the one that I recommended using a little abbreviation, CA, as opposed to a principal. There were actually 11 of these core approaches. And we decided that was too many for you to try to integrate into one assignment. So we picked the 6 that we just thought you were most likely to be able to give evidence that you were thinking of. Now these, do you notice A says fostering oral language and communication? I think you can do that. Don't you want your children talking while they're playing your learning activity? Yeah, and don't you want to build social skills and language skills? So I think you're going to be able to do that. All you have to do is, can be new paragraph, 4C, broad repertoire of learning approaches, core approaches we call them. You can just put A. You don't have to repeat it. A, and you put. This is, as we were engaged in this activity, we were playing the board game around a table. And some of the other children came over and offered support to their peers. we were constantly talking and using the new vocabulary. So you don't have to repeat fostering oral language and communication as you explain how you did it in your activity. All you have to do is put an A and explain it. B, focusing on individual children's characteristics, needs, and interests. You think of one example. C, creating support for play. Piece of cake. D, teaching through social interactions. Now I want to make a comment on E, using integrative approaches to the curriculum. Some of you, when you go to your classroom, the classroom will have a theme for a week, sometimes 2 weeks. Especially this time, it can be winter, might be the theme, and everything is going to be snowmen and snow and weather. In order to get this one, and I'll tell you how I score it, I have to score it a plus if it's really well designed in your activity. A check mark means, okay, you met the standards. 0 meaning not there, not adequate. In order to get this E, what happens if you go to a classroom and they don't have a theme for the weeks while you're there? What you do is you focus on the word curriculum. You go back and you make your activity focused on some aspect of the 3rd grade curriculum. And maybe it is that they're teaching manners in the 3rd grade turtle room. That's part of their social skill curriculum. So you decide you're going to do your activity around manners, and you're going to build it around a certain book that they've been reading in the classroom. So you've integrated it. The key is you just don't pick something out of the blue, a learning activity that has no connection to the classroom. You pick an activity that's closely connected that you can integrate. So if it's part of the theme, the winter theme, you just put theme in bold and you cite winter. And if it's not, no theme, you write curriculum in bold and you specify how you design that as one of your core approaches. Now on F, the most frequent way that I've seen of making the most of the environment, schedule, or routines is for people to say, I did my activity during children's free time or center time. I made it into a center and we all went to the center for my activity. And that works very, very well. The last one, you don't have to write anything, sort of. The last standard is not NAEYC. The last standard at the bottom of this paper is Ohio Teacher Standard. And Ohio, to give you a teaching license, has an expectation that your oral speaking skills and your written communication skills will be superb, superior. So this standard says everything that you write must be at very high quality. No typos, no misspelled words, professional in its tone. So with that being said, one of the things that you have to do for this assignment is you have to have a peer editor. You have to get this done well enough in advance. And your peer editor could be your journals today to start reading and scoring. I like to have them in a soft-sided folder like this. You turn in your assignment, your rubric. You can have scribble marks all over it. That doesn't bother me. And then I'm going to go through and I'll be marking actual places here. Remember on core approaches how I said pluses and check marks and zeros? What I do is, and this is uniform with Hamilton and Middletown, is I will give you an initial score. Oh my gosh. Hold on, Teresa. That means it's time for a pill. Understand this, it's important. Each of these standards, 5 standards, each can be scored 4 points. 5 times 4 is 20 points. I'd be delighted. I do have 20-point scores. You get 5 points for the photo essay. really rich photos documenting pictures of children only with permission. Classroom, you might show the part of the classroom. I'm just giving you an interesting tip. I never thought of it before, but you might show part of your classroom environment from your classroom, some aspect of it that you're going to refer to 1C, you little tricky devils, you, trying to beef up your 1C caring community. The first score that you earn is the score that goes on chalk and wire. The first score. I'm going to tell you an unfortunate story. I never had it happen before. I've had 2s before, and I do resubmits. After I score it, I mark little notes and I tell you where I need more evidence. Then I give it all back, and usually what I'll say is, write an additional paragraph on this, or clearly identify 2 more core approaches. If your score was a 2, when I give it back to you, the score stays the same. That's why I want to give you a lot of time when you come back in March to work and write on this and use your peer editor so that you can get the best scores. Last semester, I think it was 10 or 11 people that I gave them back their DAP paper, and I said, you must resubmit it, and usually I say a week or 2. You resubmit it and do this, write a paragraph, or this, clearly explain. So the first score that goes in is the score that stays. When you submit this paper to me in hard copy, you also start chalk and wire. That's your e-portfolio. Those technology fees you've been paying to Miami University pays for this expensive e-portfolio, which, by the way, you can use as a showcase portfolio if you want to. When you go job hunting, it's not a requirement. But for our program to be accredited, we have to have our key assessments, all of them, in e-portfolio. I will score those on that first score on chalk and wire. I give it back to you. You scored a 2 on one standard. You did really, really well. You've got, let's see, 4 times, let's say you got 4s on the other, you got 16, and then you got 2 on one, you've got 18 points. That's really great, but you have to meet each standard. So I give it back to you, I say resubmit, it's only one standard, it's only one paragraph. I said resubmit this in 1 week. What I do is when I go back and I rescore it, I don't go on to chalk and wire and change your score from a 2 to a 3 or a 4. What I do instead is have you upload your resubmit paragraph, and then I go back to chalk and wire and I write on resubmit, all standards were met, Dr. Montgomery. And then you're good to go. So in other words, it sounds really frightening to read at the top of this assignment. All of these, you must meet all standards before proceeding. Failure to successfully resubmit will result in, I know, it's really frightening. I will tell you, last semester is the very first time I had anyone who ever scored at A1 level. I've had 2s before. I've even had one person who had 3 2s. On resubmit, they were able to do fine and meet all the standards. But I had one person last semester, she had 3 1s. So I will tell you, I called her into my office and I said, we need to have a heart-to-heart. And I told her just what I told you today, that the bar for becoming a teacher is getting harder and harder all the time. And I said, for what's coming with that teacher performance assessment in student teaching, unless you do a total turnaround and commit to early childhood, I'm going to predict right now that you are not going to be successful. You may scoot by with 2 more key assessments, but you will not pass the teacher performance assessment. Wouldn't that be a shame to go clear through senior year go to student teaching, and then not pass the licensure assessment that you have to take. I will tell you, she was in 2 bands, and I said, you're gonna have to give up some of your extracurricular activities. You've got 2 weeks to resubmit. She did, she passed. Whether she stays in early childhood, I'm not certain. This requires hard work. This is challenging in the, not just the standards that must be met, but it is exceedingly challenging and much more difficult than what early childhood majors here at our university had to do just even 2 or 3 years ago. So by way of warning, this looks really, really tough and demanding. It is. Teaching is hard work. But I think that what we're doing right now in our department, since I'm your program chair, that what we're doing in our department right now is tough and demanding, because I want each and every one of you to do that teacher performance assessment and score really, really well. And that teacher performance assessment has 11 rubrics. You submit 2 videotapes, up to 15 minutes of you actually teaching, and you submit 3 to 5 connected lesson plans. And one of the activities that you'll do for me later in the term, and we're going to do it as partners, is I'm going to give you your first lesson plan, and I'm going to walk through how you will do it so you will score very, very high on the teacher performance assessment. So I'm going to publicly thank Teresa Williams. I don't know how I would have done the semester without you. She has been a blessing. So thank you, Teresa. You captured that on film right now. All right, so I'm going to stop right here. What kind of questions do you have? Because I know this is overwhelming. So Teresa, talk about what we're going to do with this video.
Do you want this one video?
Oh, it doesn't matter.
Okay. I'm going to post it on the forum for everybody to go back and look at, so that you can, because, you know, sometimes when you listen, you catch some things, you miss others. And this way you'll be able to look at it again. I apologize for being late, but I had an extenuating circumstance. It just took me out of control. So anyway, but we have this little bit that we have here. It's not a little bit, actually. I think it's like an hour and something. And you can refer back to it. So you'll be able to look at it on forum after tomorrow morning or tomorrow afternoon. And we'll probably actually also post it on YouTube as well. And then, you know, some of the other people who may not be able to make it for any reason can actually access this as well, because it's a very important assignment for you guys.
Now, one thing I want you to know that I always do is when I receive a question, you're out in the field, and I'm just going to tell you already, I know you're going to stress out. I just know you're going to stress out. And it probably will be after you get past week 1 and do the case study. And then you're getting down to the DAP. Here's what I do. You send me a question, and it's, you're just overwhelmed, stressed out, and say, I think I'm confused. You give me a good question, I will give you a good answer, and I will copy your question and send it out to everybody, both sections. So questions are okay. And I always feel like if I'm helping you, I need to help everyone. So if you have a question about the nature of the learning activity, that's more individualized. But if it's a question more general about meeting a certain standard or using abbreviations or highlighting, I will send you back a response to everyone. What I'm saying is I can't come out to all your field sites. I'm trying to arrange it. I don't know when I'm going to be able to drive yet. I'm trying to arrange so that we can use the pre-K classrooms here in Richmond. We've got 5, so that Marty can drive me, and I can do site visits. So you're not going to have me at your site. I'm not going to be able to drop in and answer questions, but I will be here. I will be available. I'm using my iPad. Pretty soon I'll be able to climb stairs, and I'll be able to get up to my office. But I don't want you to feel that you're all alone. The main thing is get your data, get your photographs, You can come back and do the writing and create the standard paragraphs for each one. That can all come later, your explanation and getting your quotes. But what's really essential is you get the information on your data chart that you need, and you get your photo essay ready. Question?
Are we able to come with you with all our paragraphs and everything and ask you if it's okay, like if it is looking okay?
That's a little too much depth and detail. I can't do that. That's why I have you do the peer editor.
Okay.
And if you want a peer editor who does the mechanics and the spelling, and you do another peer editor who was in 272 last fall. By the way, I had some really, really good papers. And I was going to give you an opportunity to read one today if you want. Or, I gave you the one for Keeley Johnson. So what I do, I like to identify, here I had one that was Katie's from last semester. Okay, so she got 24 out of 25. It was really, really great in that she used the Pete the Cat book. She used, if you don't know Pete the Cat and his 4 groovy buttons. She did such a great job of integrating her project around Pete the Cat. And here's just a little bit of hers. But, I like to keep these because I think seeing an exemplar can really help. Now, by way of explanation, when I post an exemplar on Nika, the assignments, not this one so much, but other assignments usually change a little bit. Next fall, they're going to have a whole new standard, 3B, on data collection. So your papers as exemplars are not going to help anybody next fall. But I can, if you start to plead and beg, post a couple more online exemplars as opposed to staying and reading them right now. So I might be able to give you hints if you think you have a learning activity that would meet the integrative, the theme. And, I could give you a hint on that, but actually reading, I think it's a little more than what I can say that I could do when we have, how many do we have, Teresa? 46?
Yes,
Yeah,
easy.
we have 46, that's a little more. Takes me, I'm going to tell you, it takes me 45 minutes to an hour for each one of your papers to score them. So it takes a lot of time. So when I say I am reading, looking for the evidence, I'm looking for the evidence on the chart, and you can put quotations on the chart. I'm looking for the evidence in the 3 pages, and I'm looking for evidence in your photo essay, your captions. So it takes a lot of time, and I'm marking that rubric to see how many points I can give you. Yes?
Do we put the pictures within the 3 pages?
Nope, they're totally separate.
Okay. And then the chart is its own page too.
It's on page. So use that format that's on there with, and make sure you have a column for multiple influences. And now you know about learning goal. If it doesn't say it on that one, make sure it says learning goals, and then you'll be well on the road. Did you have a question here? No. Okay. Any question? Okay, stretching. Okay. Anybody want some more food before you head out? Do you want me simply to post, or if anybody wants to stay and read a couple, I've got more.
And I brought the back.
From later.
I can send some back with Teresa. Can we just post a couple?